Hello, it's Chris the Frog of Sewer Spewer with yet another video in my series where I talk about music that was released in the past month coming out of Jojage, or so-called Montreal, and so-called Quebec, and so-called Canada. And in this video, I'll be talking about releases that came out in November of 2025. And I realize I'm recording this at the end of December. And like I said in last month's video, it's just getting harder and harder to find the time to actually sit down and record a video where I talk about this music, because I had to wait until I was on my Christmas break to actually record this video. And my original plan was to talk about both November and December releases, but I wasn't really anticipating the amount of releases that would come out in December. So I'm going to make a separate video just for December once I'm done listening to everything that came out in December. But after that, I think I'm going to end this video series just because I don't have the time to do this, at least with my current job situation. So I'm going to try to find other ways of promoting new music out of Montreal. But let's just focus on what has come out in November. So here we go. But before we get to the November releases, there is one album that came out in September that I completely missed out, but I feel like I need to mention because it's coming from a band that has been active since 1986, and that is B.A.R.F, or Blasting All Rotten Fuckers. And you might have noticed I have a poster for B.A.R.F over there, and that was for their final show in 2005, but then they reunited in 2012 and have been putting out music since. And this is their 8th album, called Visceral. And this album is very interesting in terms of how they're integrating other genres with their music. Obviously, they have their typical death metal, thrash metal songs, but they also have a ska song in this album, and there's a few songs with a folk acoustic intro or a piano intro, and then I think one of the final tracks is a Celtic drinking song. So very interesting choices here, but still a solid release from a band that have been around for almost 40 years. Okay, now we can get into the November releases, starting off with a grindcore trio called Ghidorah and their debut album, Obsidian Heart. And this album starts off as a typical grindcore album. You have these down-pitched, low-growling vocals, this kind of like lo-fi production, a bunch of samples, and fast drums, fast guitar. But then it gets interesting near the end with this 8-minute long song that goes through different phases, is very progressive and atmospheric, so it really demonstrates that this band is more than just one note, so shout out to them. Next up, we have a demo from an electronic synth punk duo called Jails, and there's not a lot of info about this band, but looking on their Instagram, I think one of the members is from other post-punk projects such as the Repulsives and Tall Lean. And I'm not even sure if they're going to be doing any live events or anything like that, but it's worth checking out because I think they're doing something very interesting here. Next, we have noise pop alt-rock duo Kim and Dro with their self-titled album, which is a collection of these cute personal songs with Kim and Dro switching up vocal duties. And this album was actually crowdfunded on Kickstarter, and it went over the goal. And this band is kind of on the up and up. They played Puza Fest, and they have a bunch of music videos out, so I really think that there's going to be more from Kim and Dro in the future. Continuing on, we have a demo from a new one-person hardcore punk band called Attention Deficit. And the songs on this are really fast. Only 2 songs clock over a minute out of 5 songs. So it's really blink and you'll miss it, but it's perfect if you do have ADHD. Next up, we have synth punk project Crasher and their debut album Oddity Populaire, which is out through Mothland Records. And the album title comes from a now defunct art space that used to be in Montreal. But I was really surprised to hear from Crasher this year because I didn't think we'd get any more music beyond their 2021 EP, Street Cleaning Machines of the World. So this was a very pleasant surprise. And they also have a track on this which features vocals from Dusty Lee of the Toronto synth punk duo Slash Need. Next, we have a new death metal band called Hierarchy and their debut EP, Wager of the Damned, which is from the singer of Bruiserweight, Grayson Carpenter, who's playing most of the instruments on this album, with his wife Nancy on vocals, and additional guitars and vocals from Zach Dean of the band Misora. Just a really solid death metal release, and I'd be interested to know if they are doing any live shows or if this is just going to be a fun side recording project, but really solid stuff here. Next, we have hardcore punk band Glowing Orb, or Glorb, with their final album, World of Piss, which was released after the band had broken up in 2004. So I was really surprised that we were getting anything from Glowing Orb, and this is why I included it in my favorite albums of the year, just because I loved Glowing Orb, I loved their sound, I loved their live performances. So I'm very grateful that they decided to release one final batch of recordings just to remember them by. Next up, we have a new metalcore band called Hostile Switch and their debut EP, Symptoms of a Decaying World. And when I say metalcore, I mean like old school 90s metalcore and not like the early 2000s mainstream metalcore, which kind of ruined the genre. But this is really hard-hitting metalcore, like the kind where you're in danger if you're at the front row when you go to see this band live. And I'm a particular fan of the final track on this EP because it features vocals from Hannah of the band Crosscheck. Next, we have alt garage rock band The Wesleys and their new EP, Explosive Device, which is out through Little Village Records. And one of the songs I was listening to on my way to work called Permanent Vacation, and that just really hit hard because I was feeling such malaise with having to go to work at this soulless job. But if you want the physical release of this EP, it comes with a double EP, and on the other side is their 2022 EP called Outside Voices. Next up, we have speed metal band Postluven. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've heard other people pronounce it as Postluven, but I say Postluven, and their debut EP, Blasphemy of Blood. And this band is pretty young. I think the members are between 18 and 19 years old, and they're very active. They play a show almost every single week. And with this EP, they're really demonstrating their power, and they're very tight on this record. And I think it was back in the summer when the members were talking to me about this EP, that they were recording it, and they were very anxious to hear what I had to say about it. So I'm finally getting around to it. Good job, boys. Keep it up. Next up, we have capital H hardcore band Cesspool and their second EP, Plummeting to the Grave, which is out through Be About It Records. And in my opinion, this is like the quintessential modern Montreal hardcore band. Like if anybody were to come up to me and ask me, what are the hardcore bands like in Montreal, I would show them this EP. I think the fact that they also use the STM train chime in as a sample in one of their songs, it helps really drive home that these guys are from Montreal and they are representing the hardcore scene. Next is a new post-hardcore band called Carences and their debut EP, Violence, which is out through Du Prince Records, which is a bit odd because that makes them really the heaviest artist on that label. And this was actually one of my favorite albums of the year. I found it dark yet meditative, and I really like what they're doing with their sound. I still have yet to see this band live, but it is on my list for next year. Next, we have brass metal band Fallstaf and their second album, Ode to the Dead, which is coming out after nearly a decade-long hiatus. The band took a break in 2016 when the singer suffered a near-fatal accident, but now they are back, and if you didn't know, this band is a metal band with a trombone. And sometimes it works on this album, sometimes not so much, but as the band explains in their liner notes, they're not really looking to impress anybody with this album. It was really made out of friendship and using their music as a therapeutic tool. And that's really admirable because they're not really looking to break any records or make any huge sales off of this. They're really just doing it out of love for the music. Next is alt-rock band Futon Zébré and their second EP, Zébriété. And I really like the humor for this band, and the songs on this album are really upbeat and positive. It almost has a bit of a summery vibe to it, which isn't exactly appropriate for this time of year, but it's very uplifting listening to it. Next up, we have a pop-punk band called Violence Gratuite and their third album, Carences. And this band isn't really that active. They play maybe one show per year, and I don't even think they played a single show this year. But it really shows that they took their time with this album and gave each song the care and attention that they deserve rather than just rushing the entire thing. Next up, we have long-running punk outfit Vulgairs Machins and their 8th album, Contempler l'Abîme, which is out through Costume Records. And I know this band is originally from Granby, but I think most of the members call Montreal home now. And this album is a follow-up to their 2022 album, Disruption, which came out after a more than decade-long hiatus for the band. And I never really got into Vulgairs Machins, but maybe somebody who's been a fan of the band, maybe since the 90s, will probably have a lot more to say about this album than I could really muster up. But overall, it's a good album, even though I have no nostalgia for this band. Next up, we have new hardcore punk band Extraña Humana and their debut EP, Bailando en la Oscuridad, which is available on cassette through Amores Perros. And I'm a huge fan of Spanish language punk bands from Montreal, and we've been very blessed this year with new releases from Total Nada and Tenaz and Sistema de Muerte. And bands like this help me engage with my Latin American roots. And even though my Spanish is terrible, it's still great to listen to these bands and keep some kind of connection to that world while I'm up in Montreal. And I particularly like what this band is doing because their songs have a bit of a gothic feel to it, especially in the guitar tone, which I'm such a sucker for. Next up, we have a new alt-rock band called Lost Boys and their debut EP, All We Have. And this band is fronted by somebody who's originally from Winnipeg but is now calling Montreal their home. And I did enjoy the saxophone on the first track of this EP, but all the songs are really good, and it sounds like something that you would hear on the radio just because they're so palatable. Next, we have trans pop rock artist Egan Chambers and her debut EP, My Tunes, which is a collection of singles that she's released over the past year. And I think this is like really her introduction to the world, where she's saying like, this is who I am. And I did really enjoy one of the singles called Honeys, which is about a very small pub out here in NDG. So if you've been to it, you know what she's talking about in this song. But I got the chance to play with Egan Chambers at a festival earlier this month, and Her backing band, I go way back with. So overall, very fun songs with a great personality behind it. Next, we have False Grind Power Violence bassist drummer duo Bien-Être and their second EP, Ultra Permanent. And with this band, they are really filling out their sound and compensating for their lack of guitars with samples and noise segments. And this isn't the only EP that they've released in recent months. They also put out something for DemoFest, which I'll be talking about in the next video. Next is alt-rock trio Moonlight Seekers and their debut album Perspectives. And I'm just hearing a lot of classic rock influences on this album. So they're not really going that hard on their sound. They're not really breaking the mold, but they're sticking to a sound that you can tell that they love and they want to share with everyone. After that, we have prog rock band Odd Times and their second album, A Tale of Flames. And there's a lot of musical variety on this album, and I feel like each song goes through its own epic journey. And the overall story with this album is about somebody who's falling in love with a witch, but then has to hunt down the witch and kill the witch, but then the witch kills them in turn. I'm not too sure of the story, but this was quite an album to listen to because I couldn't finish it all in one sitting. I had to finish it in a couple of sittings just because each song is pretty long and it takes a while to absorb each song. Next, we have garage punk band The Soreheads and their debut EP, I'm Not Your Fucking Sex Doll. And earlier this year, the band dropped demos for some of the songs that appear on this EP. But the Soreheads are really making waves in the local scene right now, and I love the singer Maria's voice on this. It's very unique and has kind of like this squeaky tone to it. But I love her lyrics as well. They're very political, unapologetic, and really in your face. And finally, I have one last release to mention, and that is coming from hardcore band Manic Reaction and their self-titled EP, which is just made up of 2 songs. But Manic Reaction is fronted by somebody I've been following for quite some time, Antoine, who used to be in a band called Scum Punch way back in the day, but one of the first punk bands I saw in Montreal when I was in high school. So I've kind of just been following him over the course of his musical career. So I'm glad that he's still doing music, and I look forward to seeing this band live. And we are at the end of this. Thank you so much for watching if you're still watching. As you can see, this does take a long time, so that's why I'll be doing only one more video in this series for December, and then I'll be trying to find other ways of letting people know what music is coming out of Montreal. But thank you so much for watching these videos this past year. And if you want to hear songs from these releases that I mentioned, I made a YouTube playlist of some of these songs. Those, not all the songs are on YouTube. Some of them are strictly just on Bandcamp. So go seek out those bands if you don't see their songs in the YouTube playlist. But the link for that should be up here somewhere. And if you want to follow me on social media, then go find me on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Sewer Spewer. If you didn't know, I promote weekly shows in Montreal, so I'm dropping videos every single week with all of the flyers and explaining the genres of all the bands. I also make weekly playlists on Bandcamp, and I do listings. And in the new year, I'm going to be trying out some new projects and see where they fit, though I'm really just going to try to take it easy because I feel like I've been putting a lot on my plate, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's really hard to find time to work on these projects. So really I just need to take it easy and not stress myself out so much. But like I said, one more video to go, and then I'm putting this project to bed. So keep your eyes open for that video for December releases. I'll be recording that sometime within the next couple weeks. And then I'll try to find something else to do with my time. But thank you so much for watching. And if you want to support me while I continue to support the local scene, then go to patreon.com/sewerspewer, where you can subscribe for $2 a month. I'm going to try to find some other ways of you to tip me just one time without having to subscribe monthly. But yes, thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for December releases.